So ladies and gentlemen, in the last few courses, we learned everything there is about sound design. And as I promised you before, we're going to take an entire session to basically just practice everything that we learned. Everything from collecting the right sound effects to applying them to setting them up. And when choosing the right kind of footage to fit for this kind of session, I thought to myself, okay, we could use a talking head video, which is a realistic example of what you're going to be faced with, but you're going to be doing a lot of that inside of Ultimate Editors. So what I decided to do is find you guys an example and give you guys something which you guys are going to be doing over and over and over again. And becoming good at this specific skill is going to set you apart as video editors. So I decided to use regular animations which you're going to be making in your day-to-day life. So once you complete Ultimate Editors, you're going to be able to complete all three of these animations which you are about to see today. As a matter of fact, we have courses on these exact same animations. So don't you even worry about that. But once you are at that point, I want to make sure you guys are editors who can sound design these animations. So we're taking things just one step a bit harder than usual. So with this being said, this is going to be a longer course. I'm going to run through my 3 stages through each of these animations and teach you guys how I think of sound design, how you should too, and how you should start viewing sound design. Let's dive right in. So our first animation that we've got over here is this one right here. So this is a Imangaji styled animation. We've got a lot of movement, a lot of UI stuff. I want you guys to kind of pay attention to everything that's happening. All right. Tons of movement. And there we go. Awesome. So as we mentioned before, there are 3 stages to sound design. Number 1 is movement. So let's go ahead and analyze what are the movements happening on the screen. Number 1, we have a pop-up over here. So this is definitely going to need a whoosh. Number 2, we have another slide down like this and slide to the right. Both of these are camera movements, and when there's any movement, we definitely need to apply a whoosh. All right, over here, there's not any major movements. This is just a subtle one. Same thing over here, it's some tracking. There's no major movements. And over here, we have a sudden zoom in. All of a sudden, this is a movement as well. So we have these 3 kinds of movements. What about the second step? What about textured stuff? Let's see. We've got the line animation coming out. It's a clicky line animation. So we could use something like a mechanical sound effect for this. Once again, guys, make sure you follow along with this so that you can learn what kind of sound effects you should use. You're not supposed to instantly know this. So if you don't worry. You're supposed to learn this as we go. Then we can use UI pop-ups for all 3 of these, like this. And then we've got the line kind of coming up. We can use a data sound effect for that. And the shatter, we can use a glass shattering effect. And there we go. All right, let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is we want to collect our whooshes. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Epidemic Sound. And excuse me for that. And we're just going to go ahead and start looking at things. So let's go ahead and dive into Epidemic Sound. And the first thing we want to do is look at some whooshes. So we already have a great library of whooshes, which we've already created. So I'm going to drag these in. And if we can use them, we already have these over here. If we can use them, then it's going to be perfect. So we're looking for a subtle whoosh for this pop-up over here. You guys remember what I covered. When looking for whooshes, you want to look for things not too long and not too intense, depending on the kind of animation you have. So let's look at this. That's definitely too long. This would work pretty well. Let's go ahead and give this a try. So over here, we don't have our velocity graph. So the best way that we can assume this is, since point A is the bottom of the screen and point B is the middle, we're just going to go to the center like so, kind of the middle of the animation. Point A is at the bottom of the screen. Point B is over here. So we're going to go to the point in the middle and we're just going to align the peak with that. Okay. Nice. Maybe we could just have it happen a little earlier. Awesome. I like the volume as well. All right. So this is a big major whoosh because this object is pretty huge. So I want to run you guys through exactly what I'm thinking and why I added this whoosh. The reason I added this whoosh is because this is a big object. If it was a smaller object, I would look for something smaller. But this whoosh is a heavy whoosh. And this really works for bigger objects. So because this is a big object, I decided to go with a heavy whoosh like so. Let's go and keep going. So the next thing we've got is this scene here where I've got this kind of subtle movement. So I need a light whoosh now. That's too heavy. That's also too heavy. Like these, for example, are way too heavy. So let's go ahead and look at some light whooshes. So we're going to look at light whoosh. That is too light. That could work. Could work. Too synthetic. These are good, but they are synthetic, and we just want regular whooshes, so we want something subtle as well. Okay, so the problem with these is they are way too heavy and way too complex, so we want something like a subtle whoosh. So let's go smooth whoosh. Maybe this would work. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, this looks good. What I like about this is it's so subtle you can barely hear it. So let's make sure we add this in the correct place. So we got to go over to our sound effects pack. Make sure you keep building out your sound effects library, guys. Do not ever stop building out your sound effects library. All right, let's go ahead and use this. So let's import it. I think it's this water Doppler. Let's add it in. Let's give this thing a try. It's still too slow. But what I like about it is it's very subtle, so I'm still going to use it just at a -10. This thing at a -3. Notice? Yeah, we're going to do that one more time over here, so I'm going to quickly duplicate it. The reason I decided to go with this is because it adds a certain texture, and it's so subtle, people are barely going to notice it. I don't want to use too many heavy whooshes after each other. Since I already used a heavy whoosh, it's time to go with a subtle one right after. Using too many heavy whooshes can seem low quality and can turn people, basically make them bored from the video. There we go. And then we have our pop-ups. And is this going to be with a whoosh? We could add a big whoosh here. Yeah, something like this could be added here, but at such a subtle volume. Here, you'll see what I mean. Yeah, something like this could be added at -10. Yes. And maybe one more time from this here. Yeah, that's what I would do for this. So what I like about these whooshes is they're so deep, but they're also so, quiet. So add a -10 to it. That looks amazing. Awesome. And there we go. That does it for the movement. There we go. And then we have the final zoom in, which is going to be probably one of these. Yeah, maybe something like this. Yeah, but this just at a -10. So as you guys can see, we don't want to go with heavy whooshes. We went with one heavy whoosh. We want to keep it as little as possible. Remember the rule of rarity, okay? Nice. Awesome. Let's go ahead and get to work on our textured sound effects. So the first textured sound effect we can have is nothing here. There's nothing really happening. Over here, we have a clicky line effect, and the perfect sound effect for this is, guess what? The perfect sound effect for this is a mechanical sound effect. It's the gear sound effects which we downloaded. So let's go ahead and find them right over in our textured place. Gears. Yeah. Like this here is good, right? But also this one's pretty good. I'm going to go with this one just because it's a light one. If it's a thicker line, you want to go with a heavier gear sound effect. But if it's a light one like this, it's shallow as well, you want to go with a light gear like this. So the point at which it starts is right here. This is where your first dot is. So just make sure that you move this over to this side. And there we go. Let's check that out. That is our first part. Just make sure it cuts as soon as the line stops, which is right here. So I'm going to cut this thing right here. And that works amazing. So let's go ahead and cut it and check that out. Awesome. Now we're just going to do a little constant power here. What this does is it just fades it out a lot easier instead of it being harsh. Like that. That's very good. And then here we don't need anything. So that sounds amazing. I'm going to go ahead and drop this down by -5. Remember, the timing here is perfect. Make sure it starts exactly as it starts and ends right where it ends. Okay? Now we get to our UI animation. So for this is pretty easy. There's pop-ups, so I'm just going to use UI pop-ups. Right? We could use these. We can also use these. I like these pretty well. So we're going to go with something a bit more obvious just because these are a bit of a bigger deal. So all we have to do is just go to the first frame here and just align the start of the sound effect with that. And then just use those throughout. So here's our second one. Go to that first frame, align the start of the sound effect. And then here's our third frame. Right here, and align the start of the sound effect like so. Awesome. There we go, and that looks amazing. And then we go ahead and we run through them, and we can create our cool shatter effect. So let's go ahead and check this out. The first one hits right here. For the line animation, here's a cool sound effect that you guys can use for a line animation. Head over to your sound effects and then write out data. You're gonna find computer data sound effects, like that. I would use something like this for a line animation, so let's go ahead and download this. I downloaded it in the wrong folder, but who cares, it's okay. Here it is, futuristic data. And I would just add this the second that the line starts, which is right here. And just have it end the second that the line ends, so right here. And just fade out the entrance and the exit, like so. This thing just needs to be super low volume, so -10. There we go, awesome. Now, as it touches these, we definitely want some shattering sound effects. So let's go ahead and get some glass shattering. So let's search up shatter, should be good. No. No. So this is good, but the problem is they have a hit sound effect with it, which is not good. One that I do remember is called like wine glass shatter, and I remember that sounded very good. Yeah. Maybe this. No, let's just go with these simple ones up here. So let's go ahead and download these and put them inside our textured sound effects. So let's just go over to sound effects library and textures and just add this inside of our just textured sound effects. There's no need to make a folder for it. Let's go ahead and drag this in and see what this sounds like. So we're going to add this in. Let's add it into our project files, double click, and let's just go with this one. And I'm just going to add it. I'm going to play through, and the moment that it starts shattering is the moment that this peak starts. Remember, the shatter sound effect is pretty loud, so just having something boom like that is pretty nice. There we go. So I like that. So let's go ahead and drop down the volume like -10. And then we could go with this one too, like that. And then one more of this last one. So check that out. These could all just be made a bit earlier. Awesome. And then this has to fade out a lot smoother. A lot smoother. There we go. Awesome. Now if we go ahead and watch through this, we should have a complete movement and texture sound effects. Awesome, and there we go. That is how you sound design a animation. Now finally, for our risers, we can't really add any risers or anything. We could, but I mean, like, just where exactly are we going to add them? So let's just go ahead and try and see. We could just add them over here right before the big animation. We could just add one riser here, but I don't see like that. There's no point in doing this for an animation. You usually do this when there's context and there's a video happening. Okay, let's see. Let's just go with this one. Let's see what happens. Yeah, no, it just doesn't work. I'm sorry. This is not going to look good here. So with this being said, guys, this is it for, animation number 1. So as mentioned before, animation number 1, just follow our 3 stages as we did before: movements, textures, and emotions, and it's all going to work out really nicely. So if you guys are able to understand everything, we followed the step-by-step process, which I explained to you guys for stage 1, following through, finding those movements, and then adding the movement animations, movement sound effects, and then following through, checking out where we can have textured sound effects, and then adding those textured sound effects, and finally following through and adding those risers, which we couldn't do that for the animations. So you guys can see we apply the same 3-stage workflow for absolutely anything. Let's go ahead and do this for the other 2 animations so that we really practice this. So animation number 2 is this, and this is also inspired by an Iman Gaji video. You have a search bar, and then you've got a movement, and then you have a click over here, and then you have a pop-up and some animations. And there we go. Let's go ahead and make this. It's going to be super easy. Let us start with stage number 1. As always, movement. Let's go ahead and watch through this and check out all the movements. So the first thing we have is a subtle zoom in over here. And then we've got a type out over here, which is all right. And then we have a movement to the bottom right here. So this is our second movement. So first movement is a zoom in. Second movement is a movement from this scene to the bottom, like so. The third movement is, let's check this out. This is pretty good. There's nothing major here. And the third movement is this thing popping up like so. So with this being said, we're going to need 3 major whooshes. As for UI animations, we have these kind of appear. We can use the UI animation for it. It's not necessary. We have some typing happening over here, so we can definitely add a typing animation to it. And then what else do we have? We have got a calendar pop-up, so we definitely want to add some kind of thing for this. Then we have an event pop-up, so we need some kind of UI animation. Then we have a click sound effect, and then we've got this pop-up. And then we have all these kind of things loading in, which we'll see how we can make. Okay, so let's go ahead and cook something up. So let's start with the whooshes for this intro. I would really like to use a quick whoosh like this one. I think this would sound really good if I cut over the peak here. This should sound pretty nice. Yeah, something like this would sound pretty cool. Especially if I drop it by -10. There we go. And then you've got your typing happening over here. And then you finally have a movement from this point downwards. So we could use one of these. I would like to use a big whoosh here because there is a big calendar coming in. Yeah, something like this would sound pretty nice. Nice. I would just add a -10 to this. Just keep it subtle. Nice. Then we have the event, and we finally have the pop-up over here. For the pop-up, we just want to use a quick whoosh. Something less intense. Maybe one of these. Yeah, one of these is good, for sure. This first one's pretty good. So all we got to do is just align the center point with the peak here. And we're good. Yeah, that's what I would do, and just add a -10 to it. Awesome. Okay, let's go and check this out. Boom, zoom in. Typing, move to bottom, and then finally move to top. All right, let's get to work on our UI animations. The first thing we have is the Google logo pops in. So let's go ahead and add a UI animation to this. Sorry, UI sound effect. I keep saying animation. I think that sounds pretty cool. I think this sounds nice for our first UI sound effect. Let's add one right here. Yeah, this would sound. Let's just add another one for the search bar. And one small attention to detail you could do is just make the second one lower volume. Like that. And then we've got our typing sound effect. So let's go ahead and get some keyboard typing. So we're going to search up keyboard typing like this. Yeah, we could just definitely do this. Let's just go ahead and download whichever one. It's good. Okay, let's add this into our project files, like so. We could definitely do something like this. That works pretty nice. And we need it to finish right here. So this is where our sentence finishes. So we're going to cut it, and we're just going to smoothen out these edges like this. Awesome. And then we've got the move to the bottom, and then we have the reveal of the calendar. So we definitely want some kind of electric UI animation here like this. Maybe something like this would look better. Wait, let's see if we can find that other UI sound effect. So we have a UI sound effect in here that's called like high-tech UI sound effect. Let me quickly just search for it. This UI sound effect definitely sounds amazing, for sure. This would work really nicely. So let's go for, I think, high-tech UI sound effect. Like that. Maybe high-tech UI. Something like this would look pretty good. All right, let's quickly just go over to the user interface. Should be able to find it. There it is, high-tech GUI. Okay, no, maybe not this. All right, don't worry about it then. Either way, we're still going to download it and just use it over here, so in the UI. So let's just go ahead and download it and put it in here either way, just so that we can have it. What's it called? It's called high-tech UI. There it is. All right, and let's just go ahead and use it either way. And then for this one, we're just probably going to use this one. Or this. Let's go for it. Why not? I like this. And then we've got the pop-in of this. And this thing just needs a UI sound effect like this. Or even something a bit more subtle like this maybe. Yeah, something like this. And then we have a mouse cursor come up, and then we're just going to have the click sound effect. So for clicks, we're going to go back to our mechanical clicks. So we're going to go back to our textures, and we have a lot of bins open now. So let's just go ahead and close all of them until we find the ones that we want. So close down all of these until we get back to clicks, like right here. Let's go over to clicks. There we go. And let's use a button. Yeah, I think that's a lot. That's usually the best click to use, like that. Awesome. Nice. And then we have the fill animation. So all of this kind of stuff loads in, and the pop-up of the join now button. So when all the stuff is loading in, I'm thinking of using a UI sound effect, like one of these ones that we used earlier on. Like that. It just shows, it kind of feels like information filling in. Something like that. And then when the join now button pops up, we can use a sound effect like this. There we go. And I think that sounds super nice. And we can definitely drop this thing's volume to -6. Awesome. And with this being said, we should be good to go now. Awesome. And there we go. With this being said, that's it for animation number 2. Once again, guys, following through our 3 stages. Whooshes for movement, textures, and then also risers and hits, which we can't add in these specific animations. Remember, guys, we're always just asking ourselves questions. We're always looking and analyzing the scenes and asking, okay, what's the movement here? What are the textures that are happening here? And if you guys are following along, you guys are slowly building up that subconscious muscle memory of sound design. So keep up the good work. And now we have one final animation. This final animation starts with a big scale in effect. We have a glitch in, we have this kind of draw out, some more glitching, and then we have this kind of pan over to here. There's a lot of movement, you guys can see it. And then we also have a pan over to here, and then we finally just have a click. So with this being said, there's a lot of elements happening over here, and there's a lot of movements. So the first thing we need to understand is the first movement is the scale in. It's going to need a heavy whoosh. So let's start with stage number 1 and analyze all the movements, okay? The second thing we've got is, okay, glitch, whatever, and we have some movement here. We have a subtle zoom in, and we have a subtle zoom in here, which doesn't really need a whoosh, but then we have a big movement here, and a big zoom in, and a big pan down here. So all 3 of these are movements. And finally, we have a big zoom into this section. And finally, we have a huge circle expanding, which is also a type of movement. So with this being said, we're going to use a lot of different whooshes. Let's get started on this. So you guys are already experienced with whooshes, which means this is going to be easy for us. Let's start with a heavy whoosh for this intro right here. I'm thinking something like this would work really good because it's short and it's concise and it really fits it. Like this, definitely needs to start earlier, like so. Awesome. As we mentioned, guys, this is our last animation that we gotta go through for the day, okay? Okay, and then we have the glitch, which we won't worry about too much right now. Not any major movement. Big zoom in, big zoom in. So for these, I do want to add some kind of sound effect. These are too heavy. Okay, that's more like it. That's a lot more like it. Okay, I really like this one. I think this one over here fits really good. So let's get started on, first of all, let's do one for this zoom in here. Like maybe make it earlier. Like this. And just add another one right here. And you guys will see what I'm going to do with this. Oh, actually, you know what? The better one would be just this one because it's so light. Yeah, something like this would just fit a lot better. Because this is a peak zoom in, so this is one that goes quick and then slow. Like this. Right? And then another one. Like this. Maybe a bit later. Awesome. And then let's just go ahead and drop these volume, give them -10. Nice and subtle. And then we have a big pan to the right. So we need a heavy one here. One maybe like this. Yeah, maybe something like this. And then just a huge pan over here. So we gotta have a -7 on this thing at least. And then maybe one of these. Okay, maybe not that long. It's definitely not that long. Yeah, it's just a lot quicker. It's just a quick movement over here. So we need one that's powerful. Maybe this one would fit. Yeah, something like this would probably fit. Yeah, but this needs to happen a lot quicker though. Yeah, something like this would fit at a -10 for sure. Don't want two heavy whooshes back to back. Just always keep that in mind. And then we have the same thing, but a movement to the bottom. So we're gonna just duplicate it like this. Like that. That looks awesome. And finally, we have a movement to the right, like so. So we're gonna use a heavier whoosh for this because it's a slower movement. Something like this could literally work here. Yeah, maybe way earlier though. And there we go. And for this last one, we definitely need a very harsh whoosh. We need something harsh. Because we have a huge circle that's about to come out. I'll use this. Yeah. Something like that definitely makes sense. Okay, awesome. And with that being said, that's it for the movement for animation number 3. I think the texturing for this is going to be really easy. Okay. All right, let's get started scene by scene. So first one, we've got a big zoom in like this. I want this to look like a digital scene. So I'm going to use one of those UI sound effects that we just downloaded, like this one. I want this to look like a digital scene. So I'm definitely going to use something like this early on. Yeah, something like this would sound amazing. Maybe even earlier. Yeah, I think that sounds amazing at a -5. And then we have a glitch appear over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for some glitch sound effects, and I've never done this before on Epidemic Sound. So let's just go ahead and see what this looks like. Yeah. I think a good thing would be synthwave sound effects. Those look, or synthetic, sorry, sound effects. Here you see when I made something like this. Okay, then let's go ahead and go back to glitch in that case. Let's see. Okay, that's it. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, let's go ahead and download this. It's out of our textures. And let's go ahead and import it. I think that's exactly what we're looking for. Okay, let's use this one for the first time. Like that. Nope, that's too heavy. We want one that's quick. Like that. We just need something like this. Yeah, exactly. Maybe a -7 too. Nice. And then we're going to need some sound effect for these two drawing out. So these definitely look like some pencil drawing. So I could just kind of go over here and look for a highlighter sound effect, I think it's called. Like that. Right. So this would basically sound like something drawing out. Yeah. Or we can try and think of some kind of other thing. But one good thing for... What would sound good? What would sound good for this? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too sure what would sound good for line animations. It's my first time doing line animations. So let's give this a try. Let's see what this sounds like. Are there any good ones? Yeah, something like this would sound good, right? So it starts here. Yeah, I think that sounds good. And then we just need another one in the background too. Yeah, there we go. So two on top of each other would sound the best. I definitely want to cut out that tap that's in the beginning. Like that. I would probably delay them a bit more to amplify that there's two. Yeah, there we go. That just sounds a lot better. And then just drop the volume to like -7. Let's check that out. And then here we've got our first glitch. So let's go ahead and go back to our, where is it? Malfunction glitch. Like that. Just add one right here. And then another one right here. There we go. And then we also here, we have two lines drawing out. So let's make sure we also add the same two highlighter sound effects. And then we're just going to space these out more. Like that. And here we're also going to have the same exact, here we can actually use these ones. Yeah, because we want to do a different UI sound effect for these circles to make it special. And do the same thing for the other one. Like that. Alright, so it happens and then this thing pops in. And we're going to just select both these and -10. Finally, we're going to add another highlighter sound effect over here, as always. We could make those quicker a bit. And then we have that join now button pop in. Like this. With this kind of glitch sound effect. I like this. And then finally we have a mechanical click, and we can just kind of get this from our clicks. Over here the button analog is the best one, honestly, so let's just go ahead and add this here. And for that last part, I'll probably just leave it as it is, to be honest. So I think that looks pretty good. One final thing we could do is we can actually add a riser right here to build up that click. So let's go over to our risers. This is the one time we're going to use risers in these animations. And let's go for this one. Yeah, let's just go for this one. This one looks good. Let's go with a -10 on it. Click. And there we go. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what our final and third animation looks like. Here you go. That looks amazing. I believe that the sound design on these is very, very special. So with this being said, guys, that completes it for the sound design section of video editing. And this will teach you everything about sound design and everything you need to know about sound design. And by now, you are actually a professional sound designer for the rest of the editing styles. So you don't even need to worry about sound design. So I want you guys to, first of all, congratulate yourself because you just completed a very, very difficult course on sound design, but also understand that there's one final stage that comes down to you becoming a viral editor, and it is music. So without further ado, let's dive straight into music. Let's master that one, and let's start practicing our viral editing skills. See you guys there.